Let's just take a little walk down the, right-wing lane and see what they're saying. Ryan Grimm had an interesting perspective on it, which was that some in the police community, some on the right, basically said, this is too hard of a hill to climb. So this is one we'll basically concede this one as a way of letting some of the air out of the tires. Some people on the right felt that way. Others, not so much. Like, let's say Tucker Carlson. We could play Tucker Carlson's whole show as an example of somebody who is
I watched the first 6 minutes of that interview with Candace Owens, and my God.
I'm less interested in his conversation with Candace Owens. I mean, he brings her on to basically say, like, here's a black person who's going to tell you that absolutely not. That I'm not racist, that you're not racist, that America's not racist. And
I mean, she went harder. It was a travesty. It was I mean, I find her very disgusting, but like just how you can live with yourself and be a black person saying this on television. But whatever.
But Candace Owens, that's her job. I mean, that's her job. She goes on and she provides that perspective. It's like that, I've talked about this in the past. When I went to Glenn Beck's 9/12 rally, guy showed up with his friend who was black and had a sign that says, do I look racist? And pointing to his black friend who he would have to have on his left side the whole time.
Swish.
Yeah, exactly. But what's interesting is when Tucker has on a guest who he presumes is going to reinforce this notion of, like, we have lawlessness, the police, we need to support the police. We're going to find a guy who's got a little bit of an accent, who's going to present as a cop.
The one time Tucker's pro-union.
Exactly. So here's Tucker bringing on Ed Gavin, who is a former New York corrections officer, who you would imagine is, at least Tucker does. And this is why you could see Tucker getting so angry, because this is what we call in the business a producer fail.
Are going through the windows of Macy's and the cops are just standing there. Do they resign?
No.
Because obviously their honor is being violated, but they're not doing anything about it. When do they start doing something about it and protecting everyone else, not just George Floyd?
No. What I want people to protect. I want the police to protect people, but specifically what we're dealing with a person in custody who was handcuffed and he was subdued.
Right.
At that point, we have to take a different tact. And one of the things I just want to suggest, Tucker,
I'm totally willing to believe that. Yep.
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Justice came out with a position paper on positional asphyxia and sudden death. It was published in 1995 and again in 1998. I think every law enforcement officer should read that. It should be read at roll calls. Because what it does, it talks about the physiology of a struggle. Now, like I said, Mr. Floyd was brought under control. What should have happened at that point is EMS should have been summoned, and he should have been placed in an ambulance. And a supervisor should have been called to the scene. I just think that it was excessive, and it shouldn't happen. And what I'd like to say,
the guy who did it looks like he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. So I'm kind of more worried about the rest of the country, which, thanks to police inaction, in case you haven't noticed, is like boarded up. So that's more my concern. But I appreciate your coming on, Ed Gavin. Thank you. Nope, done. Thank you. Heather McDonald is the author of The War on Cops.
He's the author of The War on Cops.
No. Heather McDonald is next guest.
Heather. I'm sorry.
His next guest is The War on Cops. That's the way he was transitioning into it. He was hoping that Gavin would come up and talk about The War on Cops to lead into the book on The War on Cops. But Gavin, and now what Tucker's doing is he's pretending like there was some type of riot and the cops standing around, should be stopping people from breaking into whatever it is, the TGIF or whatever is around there. And instead of worrying about Floyd, well, I mean, they probably should have worried about Floyd because they killed him. And Tucker is so mad that his producer let this guy come on and actually essentially not just agree with the verdict, but say that like cops need to do better in this situation. This isn't a one-off. This is a cop problem. This is not a Chauvin problem. This is a policing problem. And Tucker didn't want to hear that at all. I don't care. Done.
I mean, I agree with you. I also think this was his way of performing outrage about the riots and looting that didn't happen that night. Again, like, he had to discard his entire broadcasting plan, probably lots of hard work, making graphics, writing scripts on the rioting and looting that they thought might happen that night. And so Tucker is seething beneath it all that he wasn't able to go return to that commentary of his.
I mean, he had his whole writing staff working on that show as opposed to posting on some type of like white supremacist
website. I know.
Yeah, and so he's put a lot of time into that. And then this
he made them work overtime.
Gavin
they
comes on.
Go to a
Ed Gavin
rally.
comes on, and he's supposed to carry the torch for like the cops did no wrong, and there he goes and he undercuts Tucker Carlson's. And the thing is that I got news for you. If Ed Gavin was Edwina Gavin, and Edwina was a woman of color, Tucker would not say, done. Tucker would have been like, oh, I've got something my audience is really going to like, particularly if Edwina is a younger woman. And that's what Tucker would have liked. It may have even, he might have enjoyed it even more if she was a white woman, because that is in his wheelhouse, right? Like maybe if she was like a left-wing activist or something like that, where he could really beat up on her, and show how
definitely a white woman. Tucker only brings people of color on in order to validate his racist views about people of color and his audience racist views of people of color. But like, are we burying the lead about that laugh?
Oh yeah, that's just Tucker being so angry.
That's maniacal.
Yeah.
Can
we play that laugh again?
That's
a guy who's so pissed that this old white dude who is a corrections officer is screwing up his narrative about policing, that he's just super
this is what
angry.
You hear when you enter the gates of hell.
Haven't noticed is like boarded up. So that's more my concern. But I appreciate your coming on, Ed. So that's more my concern. But I appreciate your coming on, Ed Gavin. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the kind of waspy, repressed rage that comes out in passive aggression. It's like it's out of a movie.
It does have that. It does have like a Succession quality to it, right?
Yeah, a little bit of that, or just like in a very poorly done American Beauty. Like, the guy has to take his rage out in some other way.